going on today, guys? Anthony here with Empire Music, empiremusiconline.com. And some perks of the job here. Got a brand new bass in my hands. Maybe one of the first in the country to actually play one of these things. This is the Fender American Ultra Jazz Bass. So there's a Fender American Ultra line. Tellys, Strats, there's a Jazzmaster P bass and a J bass. This is replacing the American Elite. I know your next question would be, what's the difference? Well, they just kind of shifted some stuff around, made a few upgrades to it. Right out of the box, very minimal setup on it, just basically tuned up and a quick tweak on it. It plays great. It really feels like kind of a Corvette of a bass. Super high end. Let me get some of this plastic off the pickup there because that was kind of getting in the way. Super well balanced. It just feels like a very high-end instrument. No neck dive at all. We'll get into why in a second. So what they've changed to this series from the American Elite, this is now the American Ultra. There's obviously some new finishes in it. I think the biggest thing that you kind of get right away is neck shape. So what was on the American Elites was a modern C. This is now a modern D. If you can imagine in your head, you know, what the shape of a C looks like, curved all the way around, where a D kind of flattens out on the back. You really feel that on the back of or where your thumb generally hits on the back of the neck. Very, very comfortable. So it's a slim neck and it kind of flattens out on the back. Love that. It's still a compound radius on the neck, but the Elite was a 9.5 to 14. This is a 10 to 14. So little half an inch radius difference down here. If you're not familiar with what a compound radius is, we may have a video somewhere on the YouTubes about that. I think I might have done that, or Todd might have done that. Brent, our crack videographer, is giving me the thumbs up. It's somewhere in there, so just go ahead and search for that. But to kind of refresh you on that, or if you just don't know, a compound radius neck, we know what fingerboard radius is. That's essentially the amount of arc that's on the front of the neck, so where you're fret at. With a compound radius, it flattens out as we go up. So where a vintage instrument would be like 7.5 or 7.25, that's a very rounded fretboard radius. A more modern instrument would be 11 or 12 to classical guitars, which might have none. Very flat. So what this does is this starts at a 10, which is pretty modern feeling, up to a 14, so very flat. So essentially, as you move up the instrument, that neck flattens out. Bending strings becomes a little bit easier for you where you need to do it. Feels great. This is ultra lightweight tuners, so it's like a nice kind of fluted tuner or tapered tuner to kind of knock the strings down, because we know as bass players, or really any stringed instrument, the lower those strings go down the tapered end there, the better break angle you get after the nut, which is really important to like reducing sympathetic vibrations. If you've ever had a bass that when you play the open string, you get some weird ringing past the nut, doesn't really affect you as far as through an amp, but you can still hear it. Having those tapered tuners and the addition of the little string retainer there helps kind of get that break angle really steep. So that's a nice little feature on there. Satin back of the neck, that feels good. Gloss headstock. Moving down here to kind of the guts of everything. High mass bridge, you see this on the Geddy Lee bass. The old high mass bridge had a little bit of a different look. This is nearly identical to what like a Leo Kwan badass bridge looks like and feels like and sounds like and sustains like. So that's very cool. Ultra noiseless pickups in it. So they were doing like a Gen 4 noiseless. Now these are kind of redesigned ultra noiseless. So think of it as like a Generation 5 noiseless pickup in there. What's the difference in that? I'd have to really A/B them. To me, at first kind of glance or first hearing it, they retained a little bit more typical jazz bass character versus the Generation 4s and the predecessors to that, which had a tendency, to my ears, to sound a little bit sterile and a little bit too bright, where this is more like traditional jazz bass, which is a punchy and bright pickup to begin with, but I just really like the sound of these for noiseless stuff. And then redesigned preamp. So this preamp in here, it's an 18 volt preamp. they redesigned it essentially to sound a little bit more. So when we start adding bass, I never really worry about when we're cutting bass, mids, or treble, because cutting frequencies out, you really always know what that's going to do. Essentially, it's like rolling off a tone knob to some extent. You can just shape it a little bit more. But adding those frequencies were always kind of the thing that would worry me about an active electronics is, am I losing clarity to that? Am I adding too much of one particular frequency? Is it getting brittle or sterile, or is it getting too boomy and kind of loose on the bottom end? So with this redesigned preamp, every time we boost something, we're still retaining a lot of like the typical jazz bass character. It never seems like it gets away from you, with a ton of headroom because it's 18 volts. So very nice preamp. Obviously, use that with caution, because you boost bass all the way, and like, yeah, you might like pop a speaker. If you boost treble all the way, it is going to sound brittle. There's no bass out there that when you turn treble up all the way, I think sounds great. So take that with a grain of salt. You got to kind of know how to use an active preamp like that. So, what's it sound like? Sorry, all the YouTubers out there that I played at the beginning of the video, so I know we've gone a few minutes in without playing, and someone's out there going to call me out in a comment telling you, hey, this guy plays at this second, this marker. Well, there's a lot of new stuff on this bass we had to kind of get through on that. So I appreciate your patience on that. So everything wide open. At the intro, I was playing with the treble side kind of rolled back a little bit, just because I felt like that's kind of what sounded good. That's where I would probably use it. So active electronics on, both pickups wide open on it, and your EQ, everything set flat, so at the middle detent position. And now I'll roll that treble knob back a little bit. So we're going to go like back about a quarter of the way. So it's on like 25%. I feel like this is where the active tone is at its best. As you can hear, it took a little bit of that top end off in the previous passes. When I would dig, it would get a little bit brittle on the top, I feel like. Okay, so we're going to leave the treble there. We're going to add a little bit of mid-range. We're going to add a little bit of bass to it. I used the knobs incorrectly right there, and I apologize. I added just some of the front pickup in. Here we go. So we're going to add a little bit of bass. We're going to add a little bit of mid-range there. I'm going to roll treble all the way out on this. Do a little palm muting. Now we're going to roll just front pickup. I'm going to add a little bit of treble back into that. Bass back to flat. Mid-range back to flat. Just front pickup. You're kind of getting this information with me. I haven't really gone through this bass that much, so this is kind of an out-of-the-box demo. I'm going to roll the mids back off on that a little bit. I'm going to roll the treble back. I'm going to add a little bit of bass. keep that the same. We're going to roll the pickup all the way back to the jazz bass. I'm sorry, the bridge pickup, they're both jazz bass pickups. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put these pickups back to middle position, both pickups wide open. I'm going to take that active switch, I'm going to flip it over to passive. Now, in the configuration down here, where we have volume, pickup selector, in active mode, what I was working with was treble, stacked bass, mid-range. This was inactive in active mode. Now that we're in passive mode, volume's working, the pickup selector's working, and this is now a passive tone switch. So it's all the way up now. We'll see where that's at. It's gonna, again, kind of be my first time hearing it as well. So let's just see. Wide open, tone all the way up, passive. Sounds great. Now we're going to roll that tone knob just back a touch, kind of where I would normally play a jazz bass. Take that back even a little bit more for the slap. Cool, so that's all the tones that you're getting out of this. Brand new Fender American Ultra Jazz Bass, 4-string version of it. It's got a rosewood neck, no more ebony. The Elites had ebony. They're back to rosewood on this, so a little bit warmer sounding. These are brand new. If you're watching this video, we're like one of the first stores in the country that has this stuff. Check out the links below, and make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, share it around on Facebook, check it out on Instagram, like it, all those things that you do on the interwebs and the social webs for you. Yeah, we're here, 412-343-5299, EmpireMusicOnline.com. New Fender American Ultra. Killer basses. There'll be a P-Bass video, Strat video, Tele video, Jazzmaster video. Myself and Todd will be running that stuff out there. Any questions, call us here at the shop. Thanks, guys.